Welcome to Martial Mentality, a martial arts inspired podcast. I'm your host, Delmar Minor, and today I have with me Coach Joseph Blackwelder, and I got with me my man, my friend, Sifu Logan. What's up, man?
What's going on, Sifu?
Thank you for being on the podcast, sir.
Thank you for having me. It's a good time. It's a good time. Good time.
So, Sifu, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So my name is Sifu Logan. I've been training in martial arts for about 18 years now. I train in the style of Lai Tung Pai, which literally translates to dig a hole. It's old 17th century Shaolin Kung Fu, and it was readapted in about the 1950s from my grandmaster Kong Hoi. And it was brought to the U.S. in like the late 70s, early 80s-ish time by my Sifu Lee. And, now my Sifu Chris, he's been doing it for 42 years. And he's been training me and working with me. My brother, who's been doing it since he was 5, is now 34. And he's been both my training brother and my real brother for over 20 years now. So, I've had a lot of time to practice and learn. And I also just opened my own school about 2 or 3 weeks ago, Black Dragon Kung Fu in Monroe, North Carolina. It was a long time coming, I'll tell you that much. It was a task, to say the least, to get that school open. I was hoping I would have had it open in March, and I didn't get it open until October or November. So it was it was October. It was October 18th was my opening. So it was a very long and arduous journey, but I'm glad that I made it.
And that's a great segue to our topic. We're going to talk about opening a martial arts school, what it takes, some of the trials and tribulations and things like that. Because I know maybe one day there may be something that you want to do as well.
Absolutely.
So this will be a great thing that you can maybe go back to, one day and say, "Oh, let me revisit that podcast."
I'm taking notes.
Yeah, take notes. Take notes. So Sifu, take us through your process of opening your Kung Fu school. Like, how did that come about? How were you motivated to do so? Like, take us through your journey.
So the first part of it was I was maybe 16 years old. And I was sparring one day at the Kung Fu school, and Sifu Lee was sitting there, and he was watching me, and, I went over and I said, "Sifu, how's my sparring?" He was like, "It sucks." I'm like, "Thank you, Sifu." Very insightful. Very insightful. And, and I asked him, I was like, "Well, Sifu, what do I need to work on?" He was like, "Forms, Jong, don't get hit, don't suck." I'm like, thank you, Sifu.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very, very insightful. And it was that day where I realized, I was like, he's not here to just tell me I suck. He's here to motivate me to do something more than I'm even realizing right now. And, from that day on, I kind of took his words of "don't suck," and I took that to heart. And, from that day on, I was like, I'm going to practice everything that I know with the mentality of "don't suck."
Mm-hmm.
And, from that day on, I realized and I really noticed my Kung Fu getting better. And at the time I was, I think I was like a brown or a green sash, which is like the 3rd or 4th sash. And, when it came to opening my own school, when I was about 18 or 19 years old, after I got my black sash and I went to Hong Kong, I came back and I was talking to Sifu Chris, and I said, "Hey, well, what should I do now? I got my black sash. I've been to Hong Kong. I'm teaching here at your school, but what's the next step?" And he was like, "Well, you could open your own school." And I'm like, that's actually not a bad idea. I don't know if he said it as a joke or if he really meant it or both, but I took that and I'm just like, you know what? I think I'm going to open my own school, because Sifu Chris was, I asked him, I was like, "What was next?" And he was like, "You could open your own school." And I'm just like, absolutely. Like, from that moment, I'm just like, I got to open my own school. So that day I started researching, what do I need to do to open a school? And I talked to Sifu Chris, and I talked to Simo Gabby, and I talked to like Sifu Matt and, other schools. Like, I talked to Sifu Alex Wall, and, I talked to like other people that I know that run the school, like, at the Peaceful Dragon. And I'm like, what do I need to do to open a school? And I talked a lot with Sifu Delmar. I'm just like, what does it take to run a school? And a lot of what I took away from it was there's a lot of paperwork, and there is a lot of red tape, and it's going to take longer than you expect. And I've been training 18 years now, and I wouldn't have been able to open a school 4 years ago. I wouldn't have been able to, because my kung fu was not where it needed to be. Right now, my kung fu is exactly where it needs to be to open a school, and that's what I've done. And I only know my kung fu is going to get better because I always follow the method of teach once, learn twice. So the more I teach, the more I learn. So my kung fu is at a place where I'm like, okay, I've got it to where I can teach it. Now I need to get it to where I can really learn from it. And the only way I can learn from it is to teach it. So that was my biggest takeaway with opening a school, is that if I'm going to run a school, I have to be able to learn from what I am teaching and not just teach what I know. But it was a lot of red tape, going through the insurance, going through like the NCBR and, the tax forms and, the permits and just all that stuff. There's, once you think you got one thing done, there's another thing you got to do. And thankfully, I already had a space available because my mother actually has her own store, and it's in Monroe. And, I asked her one day, I said, hey, what would you think about me running a kung fu school out of your space? And she was like, I think that's a great idea, because you could have your classes after I close. We can clear off the retail floor, and we can split the rent. It'll make it easier on both of us to, so on and so forth. And I'm just like, that's a great idea. So I'm very thankful to my mother for being there to have a space available for me. And she even asked me, she was like, do you need help with anything? Do you need any of this? Do you need any of this? I'm just like, I appreciate it, Mom, but like, I got to take this hat on. I got to do this. I got to be the one to lead the charge on this and really get it going. And, but, I had a lot of support along the way. I had Sifu Chris, I had Sifu Delmar and everybody at his school. I had Sifu Matt and everybody from my school, or from Thundering Wave Martial Arts. I had a lot of them backing me up, Sifu Ed and, Casey Martin was one, Alex Wall. A lot of these guys were really helpful with me in my, opening my Kung Fu school and opening that journey up for me. So, that's a lot of it was, a lot of the trials and tribulations that I ran into trying to open a school.
Excuse me. So let me just kind of piggyback off of that, because a lot of what you said kind of reminded me of opening here. So I remember, obviously we weren't in this space. I remember actually starting our school in a dance studio, and that was an eye-opening experience for me, because that was probably the best stepping stone for me, because I kind of had that same, moment where it's like, hey, I like to teach because I enjoy teaching, and teaching was what was going to keep me motivated. Teaching kept me motivated. Teaching kept me wanting to learn. Like you just said, to teach once is to learn twice. And I was like, man, like if I teach, I'm going to get better. So it was kind of of course I wanted to teach, but it was also for selfish reasons too, because it's like, hey, I'm going to keep training. I'll keep improving, but then I also get to share what Kung Fu has done for me. And not just Kung Fu, but just martial arts in general, because martial arts was very transformative for my life. And so I felt like, hey, I could also influence somebody else, but also keep learning for myself. So I remember I think I had went to go visit my Sifu at the time. He was in Las Vegas. And so I remember getting a phone call, and a lady that I knew was like, hey, like this local dance studio is looking for somebody to teach martial arts. And I was kind of like, okay, well, I'll look into it. Sure, why not? So
they specifically wanted somebody to rent the space to do martial arts.
To do martial arts. And let me tell you why. Good question. So what was happening at the time was like the other dance studio in town. Now, this was in York, South Carolina. Yeah. So
Y-Town.
Yeah, Y-Town. So the other studio in the area had started to do martial arts as a way to draw in young men. Because, dance is normally, more female based. Right. And so they were like, well, let's do something to draw in the little boys. And so the other dance studio decided to say, oh, okay, well, I'll do the same thing. So they were looking for somebody to rent a space to. And so I went in there, and I remember that, this was like super, super, when I say cheap rent, I mean, I will
Can't pass it
never, I
up.
will never get rent like that
Right.
again. So it was a blessing at the time because I was able to not have to worry about overhead because when you're opening a school, especially if you're going to do a commercial space, that's so expensive. Depending on where it is,
Yeah.
the overhead can be so expensive. And then, like he said, there's so much paperwork to go through to make sure that you're insured and to make sure things are safe. And, you got to buy equipment. If you need mats, it depends on what you're teaching.
Yeah.
You need all that gear because, people will sue you.
Yeah.
And so you make sure that you are covered.
Gotcha.
So that's a huge, huge aspect of it. And but either way, so I remember meeting with Miss Alicia, and Miss Alicia was like, "Hey, yeah, I'm looking for somebody," and so we picked Tuesday and Wednesdays, and those were our class times, and we maybe had about maybe 3 hours per day or something like that. I don't remember what it was off the top of my head, but we had so the school was in an old Walmart, so we had a big space. Our space was huge. And so started teaching out of there. I was there for maybe, I'd say about 3.5 years. And the school just naturally started to grow. That's how I met Trevor, and that's how I met Mr. Ed, and people like that. They were from the York area.
Trevor Caine when you was in the dance studio.
Yeah, that's how I met Trevor. I remember, the dance studio would do recitals, and then I would perform at the recitals, and Trevor saw me at a recital.
Nice.
And Trevor contacted me on Facebook. It was like, hey, I didn't know there was martial arts here. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, I'd like to come and try class. And I've known Trevor since. Here we are, right? So
nice.
Things like that. And I'm sure Sifu Logan's gonna have stories like that too, with when he meets students and stuff like that, where it's just kind of like fate. So either way, so eventually a gentleman by the name of Phil Henson, Phil worked with my dad for years, and I didn't know Phil did martial arts. I knew who Phil was, and he knew who I was. So he came by to visit. And he's like, oh, I didn't know you were teaching. I'm like, yeah, I've been teaching for a while. He's like, you ever thought about, moving out of this space and maybe having your own space? And it had kind of came up a little bit, but, I was so comfortable there. Like I said, I had super cheap rent.
Yeah.
And we had grew tremendously. Like we had a really big class. And so, to be honest, I was just saving money.
Yeah.
They were paying me tuition. I was saving money. I had, a big space. I had cheap overhead. So it's like, why would I leave this place?
Right.
But the thing was, the students wanted more time, and we can only get a limited amount of time.
I see. What was your schedule like over there, if you remember?
So the schedule was kind of like, it was like maybe 6 to about maybe 8:30ish or something like that.
Was it like a few times a week?
Like 2 times a week.
2 times a week.
Right.
Gotcha.
So I had like a kids class, and then I think I had an adult class. So it was maybe 2.5 hours or something like that.
Gotcha.
It wasn't too bad.
Okay.
But the thing was, if we wanted to do like a seminar, or if we wanted to do something else, we didn't have that space available. It made it difficult to get the space.
Right.
And so, Phil was like, hey, let's just look around. You might find something. So I said, okay, sure, why not? Let's give it a shot. And I had talked to everybody there, and they were okay with it. So we looked around, and we found the spot that we're in today. And the gentleman, his name is Frankie Wright. So Frankie Wright's our landlord. So shout out to Frankie. Thank you, Frankie. He gave me a really good deal on the space. Like something that I was able to afford. And I was like, okay, well, cool. And so we moved everything over here. We didn't have the mats and all the stuff that you see today. That took years to try to establish, so it wasn't like you just came in and then poof. Like this literally was like building a house.
Yeah, I remember when there was no mural.
Right.
I remember when there was no mats.
Right.
I remember when there was nothing on the walls.
Right.
I mean, I remember when this was just like a pretty bare space.
Right.
I mean, when you first moved in, it was, and that was a long time ago, because I think I've known you about 15 years now.
Right.
I mean, that was a long time ago.
So it took years to get some of this stuff.
Right.
But eventually we got to kind of where we wanted it to be, and then we were able to get another space. That space over there, we got that a few years ago. But it took time. It wasn't just like snapping it just happened.
Right.
But yeah, so that's kind of how our school kind of came about. And I remember for a while I didn't do all the paperwork right. So that's why I was really on you about making sure the paperwork was right, because I didn't do everything right. It was kind of trial by error, and thank God, there wasn't any kind of like accidents or anything like that.
Mhm.
But like, I was able to kind of figure all those things out and make sure that everything was insured and taken care of.
Did both of you guys? This is kind of a specific, but like, did both of you guys have to go through the city to get approved?
I'll let him go first.
It depends on the state and the county that you're in.
Right.
In Monroe, you have to go through the city permit office,
Okay.
but you don't have to get a business permit, but you have to do like your fire inspections certifications and
Okay.
like you have to do your safety inspections and stuff like that, but you don't need like an actual business permit.
Okay.
But you do have to do all of like your safety inspections for the physical space.
Even if you're leasing this space,
Even if you're leasing the
your
space,
responsibility, not the owner of the spaces. You have to do all that stuff you just mentioned.
Yes, because since the liability is under
The
name,
business.
the business,
I see.
then I'm liable for the safety of the building.
Mm.
So, and it's really stuff like, exit signs and fire extinguishers and like, are the exits clearly marked and, do all the doors work? Is it handicap accessible? Stuff like that.
Gotcha.
So, but I know it differs by county and it differs by state.
Gotcha.
So that's how it is in Monroe, North Carolina. But, I don't know what it's like here in Rock Hill.
So interestingly enough, in this county, when you're in the county, it's different than when you're in the city.
Mm-hmm.
So in the city, like if
This
you're in
is
the
not
city,
considered city.
this is county.
This is county. Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I know, right?
Yep.
I didn't think so either.
I thought it'd be Rock Hill city limit, but
Mm-mm.
then again,
and I thought it would be too, but it's not.
right,
And so
I
like,
live in the county of York.
so I thought I would need a business permit, but they were like, no, you're in the county, you don't need a business permit.
Right.
And I was like, what?
Right.
Okay. And so like a lot of this stuff is like, for me, from my experience, was a lot of trial and error. It was like, oh, well, I thought I need this. And it's like, no, you don't.
I don't know if I've ever quite really told you this, but like I do not have experience opening a martial arts school, but I have. I am the owner of an LLC, partial owner of another LLC, and then I've tried 2 other business ventures. I don't know if I've ever told you that.
Mm-mm.
Like, so I've done that, but I did it from home. Like that was my work address was my home address, so I
Mhm.
didn't have to do any of that.
Mm.
Not to mention I was in the county as well.
Mm.
But I would love to open, no matter what it is, martial arts school, gym, whatever you want to call it. Mine probably going to rely more on like fitness and then maybe self-defense.
Mhm.
But let me just tell you, like, and you know this, but when you try to do something from home that requires people to come in person, the stuff I didn't. It involves me going to them.
Mm-hmm.
Service-based, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if it's something where people have to come to you, you've got to have a place. You've got to have a place of business, not a home.
Mm-hmm.
Even if your home has a nice office, it's not the same.
Not the same.
Not the same at all. So I'm gonna have to go that route one day if it comes to opening a gym.
So for Sifu Logan, I know. I mean, Sifu, you probably had the easiest route because you already had a space.
Yeah.
I happen to be, just blessed. I think it was just God ordained because we didn't really search a long time for this space. Really didn't. Maybe a few weeks.
I was at no point ready, but I've looked and good.
Oh,
Good
it's
God
it's
Almighty,
ridiculous.
man.
Yeah. Even in like the cheap parts of town, it's too much. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know how anybody would,
Yeah.
afford it because,
Right.
martial arts right now is not my full-time job. I have
Right.
a regular job and it supports my Kung Fu school
Right.
because I just opened. I have 1 student.
Right.
So, but I've only been open 2 or 3 weeks.
Right.
So, right now, and I had to work full time. I had to work overtime. I had to save money just to pay for the tax forms and the insurance and
hmm
the domain for the website and getting T-shirts made, like all that stuff. I had to pay for out of my own pocket.
Right.
Because I don't have influx from tuition yet.
Right.
Because I don't have any students yet.
Mm-hmm.
So just starting out, like you got to save
It's
up
an
some
investment.
money. Yeah, it is. It really is. And
Yeah.
eventually it does pay off. But I've already decided that any money that comes in from the Kung Fu school is going right back into the Kung Fu school.
Hmm.
I'm going to invest it in mats. I'm going to invest it in sparring gear and
Yep.
and mats and weapons and, you know, sponsoring people to go to tournaments and stuff like that. You know, I'm not gonna just be like, oh, I got money now, I'm gonna, you know, go buy a new Lamborghini. Like, I'm not gonna, you know, that's
Right.
because that's not fair to my students.
Yeah.
I spent thousands.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
when
yeah.
I say thousands of dollars to start that school,
Right.
thousands.
Yeah,
You'll
of
spend
dollars.
literal thousands in the first month's lease.
yeah.
I
Like-
spent thousands.
Yeah, I think I spent probably about $2,000 or $3,000 just
Yeah.
to get the school open.
You still haven't been to the house. Like, I've got I'm not just doing a home gym for me. I'm accumulating, like, I have enough stuff to open a small gym now.
And that's
Like,
good.
Yeah,
but
that's
I'm
great.
hoping to avoid any cost, like it's much cost when the time comes. You know what I mean? So I like people, like my wife will be like, "Why you need another bag? You know, another like set of whatever mitts, gloves, like more mats." I'm like, I'm trying to open gym one day. You
Right,
know, like
right,
let me get
right.
rid of that stuff now. Like,
And that's
the
good.
cost.
And I'll tell you this, like I was telling Sifu, you know, he was like, hey, you know, I'm looking for, you know, this gear, that gear. I say, man, go to Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah,
Yeah.
get
You
the
can
used stuff.
You can, yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Get a
your
deal.
stuff doesn't have to be brand spanking new. It can be used. And I promise you, most of the stuff in this school is used or given to us.
People are gonna come in and use and abuse that stuff. And here's the thing: like, if they get in there and get serious about it, you gotta get your own gear.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the way
I
I
had to
see
buy
it.
my own gear,
Right.
And you know, and a lot of people prefer to have their own gear anyway.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you know, if you have something available, great. If you don't, a lot of people do eventually get their own gear anyway. Like,
Right.
I know I did. I know a lot of people that got their own gear.
I feel like if anybody sticks around long enough, like you got to
Yeah.
get your own stuff.
Well, it's more
Yeah.
sanitary.
Sanitary.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
way
yeah.
more sanitary.
Right.
You know, you're not sharing like community gear. And granted, like now we have community gear and we keep
Yeah.
it clean,
Right.
but it's different when it's your own.
Oh yeah.
Way
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
And you know, me and Sifu Delmar went about it about the same route, where we opted into a shared space.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you know, he got into the dance studio, and that's a shared space. That's, you know, so his rent was really cheap because it
Right.
was a shared space.
Mm-hmm.
You know, same with me. I'm subletting from my mother's store, and you know, I just pay a portion of the rent,
Right. It's the way to
And-
go. Smart.
and you know, so it doesn't really cost that much. But if I was gonna have my own standalone, you know, I would need like a pretty good sized student base first just to afford the rent.
Right.
You know, and not to mention, you know, if I move, is my insurance going to increase?
Yeah.
Is my permit, you know, going to cost more? Is it going to be, am I going to be required to fill out a different permit? You know, and then there's the moving costs, and then there's like all these things that you have to think about when you're trying to get into a space. But I
Yeah.
do think one of the smartest ways to go about it is to try, like, first starting out, is to try to find a shared space, because normally they're cheaper, they're a little bit more flexible, and you know, normally a lot of times those places already have what you need.
Mhm.
It's just a matter of getting the students, and
Yeah.
that's, I don't want to say that's the hardest part, but sometimes that is the hardest part, because all you can do, you can plug on Facebook and Instagram. You can go to, like, you know, colleges and do self-defense seminars. You can put
Flyers. and
flyers
word
out
of
at
mouth,
schools
like-
and community centers and all kinds of stuff. But, you know, you gotta stay true to it. You have to stay. You can't just be like, after 3 weeks, be like, oh, I don't have any students, I'm gonna stop posting on Facebook. Like, you can't do that. You gotta keep going. You gotta keep posting. You gotta keep plugging. You gotta keep doing all those things.
Mm.
You gotta get your name out in the community. You have to.
Yeah.
You got to keep pounding.
gotta keep
Pounded. There you go.
We ain't gonna talk about that. We ain't gonna talk about that.
Oh man, listen. So let me say this. As I'm glad you said that, because everybody goes through that time where maybe your student base, depending on if you have a, you know, it can be a club, it can be you're using the shared space, you have your own, you know, space, whatever. But you have that downtrodden time where maybe you don't have as many students as you normally have, and things get a little tight.
Mhm.
I mean, that happened to us this year for a little. You know, the economy got a little bad, and people are going to cut the luxuries out.
Yeah. You don't necessarily do it for the money.
No, you don't. Listen, and I'm gonna, you know, say this: if you're teaching a legit martial arts system where you have standards and that you require people to work, you're going to attract only a certain type of person. And a lot of times those schools that are getting a lot of students can sometimes be the McDojos. I'm trying to be politically correct, but they know how to draw you in. They get you on these, they get you on these contracts.
Cobra Kai.
Yeah, they get you right. They got a way of drawing you in and make sure, like, hey, I'm gonna get your money. Yeah. And whether you learn or not, I don't care. Because you just signed a 3-year contract.
Like Cobra Kai when they try to franchise. When Johnny Silver took over.
Yeah. And that's how they get you.
It's one of those things where, I've seen schools where, the like the head Sifu, like if you're below a certain sash, you never even interact with him. You're being taught by his black sashes or by his students or something like that, because the head Sifu is, he's in his office or he's working with his other black sashes or something like that. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with students teaching other students, but, it's part of the Sifu's job to interact with everybody.
Yeah.
It's not, it's not just because, I'm a Sifu, I can, step back and, let everybody else handle it. Like, no, when you're running a school, you need to be like, you gotta be in it.
You gotta lead from the front.
You gotta be right in there with everybody because you're the face that they're seeing, and you're the one running that school, and you don't want to go out there and a student be like, oh, how's your Sifu? And a student be like, I don't know, I never see him. That's just that's no bueno. It's no bueno.
No. Or you see that the Sifu never does any teaching on the floor, doesn't showcase anything. He's always got his students doing stuff. To me, those are like red flags.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
You need to know if the guy who is teaching you, that guy's got to have some kind of skills, man.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, you meet a lot of people that, maybe they're great businessmen and they got other people running their stuff. And maybe they're good, but guess what? They got somebody else running it. Nah, I got to see you.
Yeah.
You got to show me something.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. Because, Sifu Chris, I love him to death. I really do. And, there was a period of time, I was in class and I never really, there was one point in time where I was like, I would see him in class and he was always teaching, but I never really saw him do forms or anything. And I kept thinking about it. And I'm like, why don't I ever see Sifu do forms in class? Well, I came to class early one day and Sifu was already there. He'd already been there for like an hour. And I was looking through the window because the door was locked. I was looking through the window and I saw him doing forms. And I'm like, okay, that's why.
Yeah, because he's doing it before.
Because he's doing it beforehand.
Right.
And that way he can get his practice in before he has to start teaching. And I never knew just how dedicated my Sifu was until I saw that. Because I knew he was dedicated, but I didn't know he was getting to class hour, 2 hours early just to practice forms and then teach for another 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
It was insane. And but then I realized that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Because when you're teaching, you don't have that time anymore like you did when you were a student to practice your stuff anymore.
Not like you want.
Exactly. So you have to practice at home. You have to go to class and practice early. You have to, try and work it into your regiment different. And because you have to teach now. Yeah. And, you're still learning when you're teaching, but if you don't keep your skills up and you don't practice like, you need to, it's going to reflect on your students. And that's the biggest thing is that if your stuff looks bad, your student stuff's going to look bad.
So like yesterday, Joe and Bender came over to the school. They're like, man, we're training, does anybody want to come? And I'm like, God, I want to go. But I was like, this is Sunday. I need to make sure I'm at home. I need to clean. I got some things I need to do. And it sucks because like, a lot of times I'll be like, yeah, I'll go, and I used to do that. But as I've gotten older and stuff like that, I've realized
you're a married man now.
Stephen. You gotta have a balance.
You gotta pick and choose.
You gotta pick and choose, right? Because it's like, man, like I can't be at the school every single day,
right?
No matter how bad you want to,
right.
I missed out on I trained and worked out 6 out of 7 days last week, but Saturday, the day I had stuff planned to do, I didn't, and I had a very good reason. But either way, I didn't train, so I made sure to train Sunday.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And as long as your family's okay with it and your home life is taken care of, go for it.
Right.
But like what I see a lot of people do who do own schools is they end up neglecting some area of their life that is probably really important.
Driving themselves on the ground.
They
yeah.
do, and
Right.
they
Digging
put
a
on
hole.
it.
Yeah, digging a hole. Yeah,
digging
yeah,
a
yeah.
hole, digging a grave.
Digging
Yeah,
a grave.
yeah,
That's-
that's the problem. And so like then what happens to a lot of teachers is a lot of them end up being like divorced or having marital issues because they put so much time and energy into their school.
Right.
And I respect it.
Right.
But sometimes like there's not a balance.
Yeah.
And so therefore, you know, the kids don't, you know, get the attention. The wife doesn't get the attention. Their home starts to lack because they're putting everything into their business.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be like that. So, you know, you're right. I have to pick and choose sometimes to go, okay, I can't come today.
Time's more valuable than money. There's an infinite amount of money in the world, but you only have a finite amount of time.
That's true.
That's the way I see it.
Well, and you know, Sifu's got it to where, you know, if he's gonna be a little bit late one day, or if he has to take a day off, or if he has to take care of something, or if he's, you know, God forbid he's sick or something like that, you know, Sifu has higher level sashes that can come in and work with the students, the teens, the adults. That can run his classes and stuff like that. But just starting out, you know, Sifu don't have that. I don't have that.
Yeah.
You know, it's all me.
You got to show up.
So I have
gotta be there.
Like I
show up.
have to be there. I don't have a choice. Like I don't
Right.
have anybody to call to be like, hey, can you cover tonight? Like I don't have that.
Right.
So just starting out, I have to be there, and I have to be there 100%.
Probably very important that you establish communication with your students right off the rip.
Yes.
Yeah,
Like,
right off.
yes.
Like
Yeah,
phone or whatever
Yes.
it is, but that way, in case of emergency, it's
Right.
like,
Yeah.
you know, because like a lot of times there's a new student, it's like, and you don't establish that communication right off the bat, like literally day one, they show up to the next class, God forbid there's an emergency and you don't show up. That's
Mhm.
just, you know, they're like,
Yeah.
well, what the heck? Where's Sifu?
Well, and you know, I'm actually running into that situation now because I start a new job next week. I start on Monday, and I have to go to Winston-Salem for training Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Mm.
So I'm
Mm.
not going to be able to be at classes Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday.
Right.
So, you know, this was kind of bad timing, but kind of good timing at the same time, because it's bad timing because I just opened my school, but it's good timing because
Learning
I don't
experience.
have
Mhm.
30 students.
Right.
I have one.
Right.
So, you know, I can go to that one student and be like, hey, I'm really sorry. I know you've only been in classes for 2 weeks, but I have to go to Winston-Salem for training. And, you know, he was really nice about it. He was like, no, I get it. That's great. You know, I'll still be there the following week, you know, whatever. And I'm like, thank God it was just one student. But,
Right.
you know,
Still.
if I had been open for, you know, 4 or 5 years, and all of a sudden it's like, you know, I got like, hey, I'm gonna dip out for a week,
Mhm.
you know, I probably wouldn't have, I may or may not have had anybody to cover, but
Mhm.
you know, it was bad timing, but good timing at the same time. So it kind
Right.
of worked out.
Right.
I think
It's
that
probably good that you, sorry.
No, go ahead.
It's probably good that you do have a community of martial artists, though, because I'm sure you could reach out.
I was just about to say that.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, like somebody would probably gladly, you know,
Yeah.
help you out.
Yeah,
there.
and the good thing is with the Laton family being so close to you, if you found somebody that you really trusted, like Ian, be like, hey, Ian, I just need you to cover class for one night for me. I got this emergency, or I need you to cover for this week, you know, and maybe you can say, hey, I'll even compensate you something, you know. So if you could just maybe substitute teach, I'm sure he would gladly do that for you.
And I've actually talked to him about that. Ian is he's been training. So a little bit about Ian. He's my actual brother and my training brother. He started when he was 5. He is our Daisei Hing, and he's been training under Sifu Lee and Sifu Chris since, like I said, since he was 5. He's 34 now, so however many years that is. And Ian was one of the ones that really helped me get my kung fu to where it needed to be to open the school. And you know, I talked to him about it, and I said, hey, I'm going to open a school. What do you think about that? And he said, I think it's great. You know, it'll give me somewhere else to go. And I'm like, that's really good to hear, because I may need your help running this school, because, you know, my kung fu is good, but it's not as good as yours. And, you know, Ian kept telling me, he was like, your kung fu's great. You know, you can teach it. You know it. Some of it you know better than I do. And I'm like, Ian has things in his kung fu that I just don't have, that I just haven't obtained yet. And, you know, I go to him and I'm just like, hey, I got this problem. I really need some help right now. And Ian's just like, all right, how do we fix it? So Ian's been a huge help. And, you know, he's even told me multiple times, he was like, hey, if you ever need me to cover class, let me know. If I can be there, I'll be there.
Right.
So, I'm very thankful for the support that I have had, getting the school open. And, my grand opening, it was, I was crying. Like,
Oh yeah, I
Sifu
imagine
Delmar
so.
wasn't there for it,
It's a big
but I
accomplishment.
was crying because, everybody that was there, I had, Sifu Trevor was there. Trevor helped me so much with getting stuff ready for my kids' classes for how I was going to run that. So was Sifu Delmar. And Sifu Delmar has helped me so much with how do I run classes, and what things do I need, and what how does my demeanor need to be, and how do I handle these situations and stuff like that. Sifu Chris was there. Obviously, he's been a huge part of it. Simo Gabby was there. She was a huge part of it.
Mm.
Especially on the business side of things. Sifu Matt was there. He helped me a lot with the fighting and the fight training and stuff like that. Bonnie was there. Bonnie, she's a really good friend of mine. And we've been friends for over 15 years. And, the amount of times that I would go to Bonnie's house, because I was working in Stallings, and the school was in Mint Hill, and I lived in Monroe, and I didn't want to go home just to come all the way back. So I would text Bonnie, and I'd be like, "Hey, can I just chill at your house for a few hours?" And she's just like, "Yeah, that's fine." So I would just chill at her house for like 3 or 4 hours, and then go to class and then go home.
Mm.
So and Ian was there, and there were a lot of people. There were a lot of people there that were huge supporters of me and my kung fu and me opening a school. So I can't tell you how thankful I am for the support that I have had and that I'm going to continue to have.
Mm.
And even when we went to the Fall Classic, I was talking to Joe Conway, and Joe Conway was like, "How are you saw on Facebook, he's like, hey, congratulations on opening your school. I think that's great." And he was like, "I think it's an awesome name." I was talking to Sifu Carrie Chun, and she was just like, "What's the name of your school?" I said, "It's Black Dragon Kung Fu." And she's like, "Oh, it's a great name. I can't wait to, have some of your students here, whatever." So a lot of the people that I talked to were just like really, really receptive and really nice about it, and they were just really like, "This is great. Congratulations." Because these are people that I've known for, 10, 15 years.
Mhm.
So they literally saw me grow up in the style and in the community. So, and it doesn't happen a lot because Sifu Delmar, he knows how many people we've had, come and go out of that, martial arts school, and how
Oh,
many
yeah.
people just not just in, our martial arts schools, but in other martial arts schools, how often people come and go. The attrition is just insane because you'll have some people that, you'll out of everybody that you may have one person that'll really stick around for like those 10 or 15 years.
Yeah.
And because I think there's maybe 3 people that are still training at that school that I was training with when I was a child, and that's Ian and Sam and Bonnie.
Mm.
Everyone else came after us, and some of them are still there, some of them aren't there anymore. But I'm the first one, and I don't know how many years to open a Lai Tung school.
Mm.
And to have like an official space, and to like I have an altar, I have all my certificates hung up, I have everything I need. All I need now is students type deal. So I'm the first one in a very long time to actually open a school of the Lai Tung style. So it's just my Sifu said that Grandmaster said that there could never be enough schools. Sifu Lee said that there could never be enough schools, and Sifu Chris said there could never be enough schools. And Sifu Chris said that if Grandmaster was here, he'd be proud. And Sifu said that if Sifu Lee was here, he would be proud. And Sifu said, "I know I'm here, and I'm proud." So that kind of did it for me.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's a huge accomplishment.
And I'll say this: it's even more rare to open a kung fu school.
Yeah. I was kind of
it
thinking
is.
that too.
I mean,
everything you
it's
see now
really
is like
rare.
Jiu-jitsu and judo and taekwondo and karate, and and there's nothing wrong with any of those styles, but
Right.
you don't see a lot of kung fu schools, especially like old school Shaolin kung fu.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see a lot of it. They're very few and far between.
Right. I check like Google pretty regular on like stuff like that. You know what I mean? So, and even here, like this is the only kung fu school in Rock Hill.
Yeah.
You know,
It's the only. I mean, let's see.
even there's a few in Charlotte. There's
so
Mint Hill, right? There's
Mint Hill is in.
Yeah.
That's about an hour away almost.
yeah.
It's from Charlotte. It's about 30 minutes.
Okay.
From
Yeah.
here, it's about an hour.
So from Rock Hill, it's about an hour.
Yeah.
And then there was a small kung fu class that was in York for a little while.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're active anymore.
That had to be before I started because I would have known.
It was.
So definitely not the past 3 years.
Robert Kitchen has his own style, Lee Chuan Fa.
Robert Kitchen, yeah.
And he had a black sash that was doing kind of like how I was doing. He was teaching out of like a dance studio or like an area like that for a little while.
Gotcha.
But I don't think they're active anymore. I don't know what happened with that. But, it was kind of like a quick flash in the pan.
Yeah.
And then after that, I mean, the next kung fu school that I know of there was one in Spartanburg, South Carolina for a little bit. And then there's one in Myrtle Beach. Sifu Shane.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, you're looking at then like maybe Florida, Georgia, Upper North Carolina. Yeah.
like
Raleigh,
Hickory, like
Hickory.
I think Mark Small was teaching his Liho Bafa out of
He was in Asheville.
or Asheville. Yeah, that's right. I'm
Yeah,
sorry. Yeah, he was
in
teaching the Liho Bafa, and Curtis, he was teaching a little bit when he was in Hickory, and but you're right. You don't see a lot of kung fu schools, especially like old school Shaolin kung fu schools. You really don't see them a lot, and I don't want to say it's a dying art because it's not. It's a living art.
We're putting kung fu back on the
That's
map.
right. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Put kung
exactly.
fu back on the map,
Yeah,
baby.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's our job here.
Yeah.
That's
right.
that's what we're here to do.
what we're talking about. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly what we're here to do. We're not here to just sit back and get a paycheck. We're
Right.
here to we want to teach students so they can go and spread the word, open their own schools, and
Right.
Kung fu gospel.
exactly. We're
Yeah,
trying to spread
that's
the
right.
word.
Yeah.
Spread the word of the kung fu. And back in even back in old school Shaolin, like even in the 1950s, when China was having their own problems and we're like, all right, we need to standardize everything, and they chose wushu to be their standardized martial art. Everybody that did other styles of kung fu, they all went to Hong Kong, or they all went to Taiwan, or they all went to Malaysia, or they all went somewhere else. And a lot of them went to Hong Kong. Like my grandmaster, he went to Hong Kong, and Sifu Lee, he went to Hong Kong, and that's why a lot of kung fu is really big in Hong Kong and in Taiwan and in Malaysia and the Philippines, and because when wushu became the standardized martial art of China, they kind of annexed everybody else. They were just kind of like, hey, if you're doing anything other than wushu, you might disappear type deal, because it was communist China. They could do that. So a lot of the styles just kind of migrated out of China and went to other partnering or brother islands or brother countries. And then they had to bring it from Hong Kong, Taiwan, Philippines. Like they had to bring all that stuff from over there, and they had to bring it all the way to the US. So, and that was, that's been, the 70s and 80s. And I mean, I know you remember, especially in the 70s and 80s, the Kung Fu and Karate era was huge.
Oh, man.
It was massive.
Oh, my
I
gosh.
wasn't there for it, but I heard about it, and I've
Listen.
read about it, and I've watched the movies, and
Right.
I've all the things. And I mean, in the 70s and 80s, it was massive.
Yeah.
I remember catching the tail end of kind of that. Still got a little bit of it late 80s, early 90s. But, man, if you were a black belt, don't mess with that dude.
Yeah.
It meant
It meant something.
Right.
That meant something then. Oh, what? Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, sir.
Right.
I didn't mean to disrespect you.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Master Sifu.
And eventually what happened is, a lot of people, as you say, you had a lot of people go that McDojo route where people started to say, you know what? I can make money off of this.
Mhm.
So you developed a whole nother generation of people that didn't know how to use their martial arts.
Mhm.
So you had these group of martial artists for a while that were like, man, don't mess with those dudes.
Mhm.
And those dudes said, you know what? I'm about to
I'm
make
gonna
some
mess with
money.
those dudes.
I'm about to
Right.
make some money doing this. Okay, well, guess what? We're gonna get you on contracts. We're going to start doing blah 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 blah. And while they may have been really good, and maybe their instructors are really good, but they promoted hundreds of thousands of people that were not necessarily good at what they were doing.
Yeah.
So then you got the market saturated with people who, hey, I've got my black belt, but they're not really a black belt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then now you've got that black belt that's not a black belt teaching somebody else and promoting somebody else to black belt, and then it just
It
trickles.
just trickles down.
And so now you're trying to weed some of these people out because you got a lot of people who maybe they have a successful school, but they're not producing successful students
Yeah.
or students who understand what they're doing.
Right.
And so like, that's why I say if you're a real martial artist, somebody who really cares about your art, you're probably not making a lot of money off what you do because you got standards
Yeah.
and you're not babysitting children.
Yeah. I don't know. I think about it. It's something I think about more and more the closer that day comes of how I'd like to teach, because there's got to be a balance, I feel like, of, you know, your retention, so
Yeah.
to speak.
It's important.
Yeah.
Right. Like Kung Fu first, but it is still part of your life as a business.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like, so
Well,
it's not like you don't want to turn everybody around or scare everybody away.
Right.
You know, we're going to come in here and you're going to lose a few pounds because we're about to grind. You know, that's
Right.
the kind
Yeah.
of style I want to have. But it's
Right.
like, at the same time, you got to ease people into it.
There you do.
yeah.
you know?
You do.
Well, and speaking of, if you're working with kids, you got to be able to teach them kung fu without actually teaching them kung fu.
Yeah, right. That's a
like,
good way to put that.
You have to be able, because it's so hard, especially 6, 7, 8 years old. It's so hard already to keep their attention.
Yeah.
But like y'all were doing in class tonight, just working on roles.
Yep.
The roles weren't great.
Right.
Some of them were doing really good.
Mhm.
But it wasn't like a Sifu Delmar role, or it wasn't like a Sihing Matt role. Like it was a kid role.
Right.
But they're kids.
Right.
But teaching them to roll alone, that's a huge feat, because kids love doing stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't really know that in a way they're being taught kung fu.
Yeah.
So you're teaching them kung fu without actually teaching them kung fu, because you're just like, hey guys, we're gonna roll today. They're just like, oh great, yeah, we love doing stuff like that. This is awesome. And but then 10 years later they're gonna be like, man, this rolling thing is easy. Why is it so easy? And I'm like, well, you were doing it when you were 6 years old.
That's right.
Or when we do our obstacle course, oh, you're working that cardio, but they don't see it like that.
Mhm.
Right,
And technique too.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
Yeah.
Climb up on this, this box here. Like,
Yeah.
there's technique to everything.
it is.
Kung Fu is everywhere,
Right.
everything.
Exactly.
So
And so like, but those are tricks you learn as you start teaching, and even with the adults,
mhm.
because adults still want, that challenging game. Like tonight when we were doing our, we were working on the Chisao and things of that nature. Okay, well let's turn this into like a competitive game.
Mm.
And you saw people go, okay, and then I'm serious, and then
Ears
you
perk
say,
up.
here's your rule set. This is
Right.
what you do, and people go, okay, I think I can do that.
Right.
Then they do it, and they're like, oh, I'm gonna do this. Let's do it more.
Yeah.
And it's the same concept. You just keep giving them candy, and they
Yeah.
go, "What is sweet? I want more."
Mhm.
And that's how you keep them coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking of the cheese style, everybody really, they really enjoyed it. Especially starting out. I could tell it was a little hard to get their attention, but once they really got into it, they're just like, man, this is actually a lot of fun.
Yeah. See.
And it's just that first little step of you got to get through the boring stuff first. And my perfect example of this is when I was a kid in martial arts. I was 8, 9, 10 years old. I hated doing forms. Absolutely hated it. And, all I wanted to do was I wanted to run around. I wanted to learn how to fight.
Mhm.
I wanted to just, get in there and hit the jong and all that stuff. I hated doing forms.
Mm.
But that's what they made me do the most
Yeah.
because I hated it. So
Mhm.
they're just like, oh, well, you're going to do this until it's right.
Mhm.
And now it's my favorite thing in the world. I love doing forms. It's my favorite thing. I do my forms all the time. And, same with Chisao. I used to hate Chisao because I always got, beat up.
Mm.
But now I love Chisao. It's my favorite thing in the world. It's just one of those things of, and plus when I was a kid in martial arts, there was no official kids class. I was thrown in with all the adults.
Yeah.
So I was doing everything that all the adults were doing. So if they were doing forms, I was doing forms.
Mm-hmm.
If they were doing jong, I was doing jong. If they were doing sparring, I was doing sparring. Like there was no kids class. So I had to, in essence, I had to kind of, grow up from a very young age because I'm 8 or 9 years old in class with people that are, 20, 30, 40 years old. And I got to be on par with them.
Yeah.
So I had to work twice as hard just to be half as good.
Yeah.
You just reminded me, especially like, so Joe, one day when you open your school, I would encourage you, have a kids class.
Yeah.
Don't neglect the children. I think a lot of Kung Fu more specifically neglect the kids.
Yeah,
and it's like, I don't want to teach kids because they're too hard to teach, but that's the next generation. And what I have seen, and I hear it all the time, I meet somebody and I go, oh, you done martial arts? She's like, yeah, I did it when I was a kid. But guess what? They boomerang back when they're an adult.
Yeah. Yeah. You've said that before.
And that happened. You don't know how many times. I guarantee if you survey a lot of people in this class, John, the new guy, John, he said, yeah, I did karate before.
Yep. When he was younger.
Yeah.
Right.
Boomerang right back. And so that's what happens to a lot of people. They may not ever stay with you forever, but what you're doing is you're planting a seed that one day they're going to boomerang back around.
Yeah.
And hopefully they'll stick this time.
Right.
And that happens to a lot of people. Or you meet people like yourself who are like, hey, I've always wanted to do this when I was younger.
Right.
And now you're older and you're more mature. You're like, no, I'm sticking with this.
Right. Yeah, it's part of me.
It's a part of you now.
No matter what, like, yeah.
Right. And so, like, that is my encouragement to both of you guys. As you get students, know that not every student's going to stay. And I remember I had a hard time because I got attached to people. And so they would leave and they'd be like, oh, it's me. I did something wrong. Maybe it's not me. Maybe they just moved on with their life or something.
Right.
Circumstances changed.
Yeah, you were just that chapter in their life for that certain amount of time.
Right.
And, I've seen, so many people come and go from the Kung Fu school that I was attending. And, for a while I was like, man, I kind of miss these people. I haven't seen them in a while. And I still feel that way because some of them I got very close with. But at the same time, I'm like, in a way, I'm glad that I don't see them anymore because I know that they have, prospered in life.
Right.
And, but they still took what they had from Kung Fu and they just adapted it to their own life. And, that makes me happy because seeing somebody take what Kung Fu has given them and make their life better, that's the ultimate goal of a teacher. Right? Yeah, that's ultimate. That is the ultimate goal of the teacher is to pass on what you know to make someone else's life better.
What's kind of crazy that I don't know if you noticed a trend here, Joe. How many people are going to the military from our school?
Oh yeah, that's been a thing. That has been a thing.
It's been a thing. It's been wow.
And like at this point, he's one who joined the military has made his way, like not back full time, but he's here. He's still like he's not. It's like no more Kung Fu. It's like
Yeah.
So that's cool too. But
it's really neat.
Right.
And so what I'm starting to see, and you're going to see this, Sifu Logan, you're going to see this, Coach Joe, as your school starts to, because your school, if you look back and look at your overarching, whatever you're doing, your school will start to transform eventually. And your school is going to go through these phases where, like right now, you're in the beginning phase. So you're going to have those students and you're going to say, okay, who's going to stick? Who's going to be the Dai Si Hing? Who's going to be that guy where you go, that guy or that girl? That's going to be the person. That's going to be my right-hand person. And that person is going to help me with the school where they're going to have ownership. And I'll never forget, like Trevor became that person for me.
Yeah.
Or Trevor, Trevor was at the school more probably than I was.
Yeah.
I was like, man, Trevor, you need to go home.
Dedicated.
Yeah, you know, like, man, you live here, bro.
Right.
But that became his life, and now look where he is. You know, he's married. He just enlisted into the military, and you know, he's teaching. Like his life is prospering, and he made that dedication. And I promise you, like as you guys continue to teach, you're gonna see that person. So. As the teacher, you're right. You're going to guide more people probably through life than you will through martial arts, period.
Put good in world give good to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Put good in the world, it'll come back to you.
It is wild. So, I mean, my advice, Another thing, and then I know you got to get home, and you got to get home because you got that steak
I
waiting
got that
on
hamburger
you.
steak.
Hamburger steak.
Yes, sir.
But
Well earned.
my advice to both of you is to keep pounding. I know that sounds cliche. I know you're like, oh God, another Panthers plug. But no, seriously.
Yeah.
No matter how hard it gets, no matter how many, even if it's just you, guess what? You go to class.
Mm-hmm.
You practice, you train.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're not training, do something at the school.
Right.
Develop that consistency that you want your students to model, and they will follow you. And then eventually, that one will stick, and then two will stick, and then it'll start to snowball. Yeah. And if you stay consistent, even if that nucleus around you starts to change, it will add back. No matter how many times I've seen the school fluctuate, it always seems to just right the ship if you stay consistent.
Yeah.
But you got to stay consistent. You got to take care of yourself. Make sure you're taking care of your mental health. Mm-hmm. I know that sounds wild, but that is huge. Yeah. People can see when you are not right.
Yeah.
And when you are not right, that will affect and permeate throughout your school.
Yeah. And when you're coming in and you're the Sifu and you're like, the one that they're looking at, just because you had a bad day at work, you can't bring that into the school.
No, you can't.
If you had a bad day at the house or if you had something, like, you can't bring that into the school. You got to go in and you got to be the upbeat guy. You got to be the attention grabber. You got to be the motivator. You got to be all those things.
Yes.
Because you're the one that they're looking at.
Right.
Yeah. And, I struggled with that for a really long time. There were times where I went to class, I didn't talk to anybody. There were times I went to class and I'm just like, I'm not going to listen to this guy tonight because he pissed me off or something. I don't know. But I was really bad about that, but, and I feel bad about that now because I realized that I actually missed out on a lot of stuff. But now when I go to class, I'm just like, I'm going to make it a point to try and interact with everybody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's one point that I have. Like, I'm going to make sure that I interact with everybody. And, my Sifu Lee, I really only ever saw him on the weekends at the Kung Fu school. But he did always make it a point to go around and say at least hi to everybody.
Yeah.
And,
that's good.
Whenever I went over to his house, because I used to go over to his house to help him with his garden, help him cook, and help him move furniture and stuff like that. And he was so funny because he would call me. For some reason, he always called me like 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and he would call me. He'd be like, hey, come over tomorrow. See if I'm working tomorrow. I'll see you at 10. And then he'd hang up. Like,
that's a good.
I guess he's gonna see me tomorrow. Yeah, it was a great problem to have. So I would actually call my work the following morning and be like, "Hey, I'm gonna be late, or I gotta take off, or something like I gotta take care of this," because if my Sifu said do something, I would have to do it.
Right.
And I would, and I would go over to his house. And, the amount of times I would go over there, and we only ever worked on like 3 or 4 things. We would work on Subji, we'd work on Kungjong, we'd work on Chisao, and like we might work on like a staff form or sword form or something like that. But it was mostly Kungjong, Subji, and Chisao. But, those were the times that I cherished the most, were when I had those like one-on-one time with my Sifu. And those are things that I want to bring into my Kung Fu school, where I can have a student just, I can just be like, hey, just come over to the house, one day and we'll do this, and, maybe we'll do some Kung Fu or something like that. I don't want it just to be just in the school. Like, I want it to be like a family community.
Yeah.
I want it to be something like, I can have a student just come over to the house and, and we just, work on stuff, or I can go to them, or I can go to their house and work with them on stuff, or I can help them move, or I can do this for them, or, and I've even thought about, having one Friday a month, everybody just comes to the school and we all just watch a movie and, just hang out.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah. I mean, that's stuff that I want to do.
Yeah.
So I don't want it just to be martial arts all the time. I don't want it just to be, we're only, here in class. I don't want it to be like work acquaintances. I want it to be a real family community.
I had a funny thought about that kind of topic the other day. It's like we always refer back to the older times. It's like, oh, that wouldn't happen back in the day of Kung Fu, like,
yeah,
because it's all hard times and everything. But But back in the day, you couldn't go watch a movie with your Sifu either. So
Yeah.
there's give and take. That's not
Yeah.
a bad thing. That's a cool thing.
Yeah.
You know, that's a really, we
I-
adapt to the times.
I had one of my previous teachers tell me, it's like, oh, you can't be friends with your students, and I was like, I don't know if I adhere to that.
You played Ghost of Tsushima, right?
Oh, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Did you play the DLC? The
Oh, yeah.
island thing? So
Yeah.
there's a part in there where Jin's father, because he's the commander of the forces,
Mhm.
right? But like he has this whole spiel, this whole speech about like, being too close to your soldiers breeds like a lack of discipline.
Right.
It's true. Doesn't mean it doesn't mean you can't be down to earth and be
Right.
friends. You still have to have that respect, that
Right.
relationship of teacher student. But
Right.
at the same time, it's like, look at the times we're living in. I mean, like, you want to hang out, we can hang out.
Right.
Like
Yeah,
you got
like-
problems that we can talk.
Right.
You know how many times I would go over to like Sifu Chris's house to work on cars? I mean, we literally had automotive Saturday,
Yeah.
where after Kung Fu class, we would go over to his house and work on cars. And I mean,
Yeah.
it was a lot of people from the Kung Fu school would come over just to work on their cars.
Yeah.
The amount of times I've gone over to his house to help him move furniture, or to like, I went over there to apply for jobs one time, and he helped me write my resume and stuff like that. But every time I went over there, I was always like, "Hey, Sifu, how you doing?" I always
Right.
saluted, always,
Right.
and I always knew, I always know he's gonna be Sifu. Like
Mhm.
he's always gonna be Sifu. But
Yeah.
the amount of times that I would go over to like to Sifu Lee's house, it was the same thing. And even when we would go out to dinner, we normally used to go out to dinner on Thursday nights. We would go to a local Chinese restaurant. But when we went out to the restaurant, we would go after class, and everybody would stand around the table until Sifu got there, because nobody sat down until Sifu sat down.
Yeah.
And then same
Yeah.
thing of nobody ate until Sifu ate first.
Man, when
So
after the tournament,
That made me laugh.
when we went to that restaurant, oh my gosh, I'm so terrible. It was my first time meeting it.
Sifu Santos or
Santos.
Dimitri?
Dimitri.
oh,
Sifu Dimitri.
He like we was all there, right? And we were waiting on you, like but I'd been there a few minutes, like, but like I had to get back to the kids and everything. I was the first guy to stand up and was like, I'm gonna go get a plate. He was joking, but at first he didn't make it look like he was joking. He's like, what are you doing? Like straight up, like, what are you doing? I was
Yeah.
like, well, I'm going to go ahead and eat. I got to get back to the family. He's like, your Sifu's not here.
yeah, yeah.
I was like, I'm like, whoa, like, okay, like, well, I was like, well, I mean, I apologize, like, I'm trying to get back to the kids. He's like, mess with me, man. Come on, I'm right behind you. Let's go get some food.
Sifu Dimitri is so funny, man. He's
Yeah,
just
messing
It's
with me,
pretty
man.
funny.
Yeah.
But it's I mean, and
That was
I
good, man.
appreciate that. I was late that day. I had some things to do
It's
after the tournament.
fine,
But
man.
you know what? Like,
funny.
I'm glad that you guys are learning all these things, because like that's stuff that honestly our world is missing. That respect, that discipline, that
Tradition.
right. Like
Yeah.
some of the some of the old ways, some of them are antiquated. I'm like, okay, that doesn't necessarily work now.
Right.
But some of those things we need to bring
need more
back.
of, yeah.
We need
Yeah.
more of
Mhm.
that we're missing. And so that's why, like, doing kids class. Yeah, well, okay. I'll let the kids talk some. I'm not gonna be like, you can't talk during kids
Right.
class. They're children.
I feel like I will have to, well, and I'm learning some of that homeschooling my own kids, but like having a room full of children, trying to teach them something that I treat a certain way in my own training, like it's going to be difficult.
It is.
But
It is.
Again,
and you have to
adapt.
you have to learn to give them and it's not just children. It can be, I mean, our adults here, they
Right.
like to joke around and stuff. And,
Even adults do things they want that they like.
Mhm.
Like even adults don't necessarily, go out of their way to do something they don't want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So, but I love what you said about being you got to have your demeanor a certain way, because in your beginning stages, not just your beginning stage, but all stages, you're going to usually be the central focus of your school. And if you're not right, everything else won't be right.
mm,
So you got to make sure that you are right. Your life has to be in some kind of order, because if your life is chaos, they will find out.
Yeah, they'll know.
They'll know.
I learned well, I probably learned it in the military, but you know, there's people that try to keep work life at work, home life at home. It doesn't.
It
work
doesn't
that way.
normally work.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. Like
Yeah.
one reflects the other,
Right.
and vice versa.
Right.
It's just the way it is.
Right.
Yeah, and you know, I'm in a fortunate situation where, you know, back in August, I got laid off. So that was my time to be like, all right, this is my time to focus on the Kung Fu school. So, you know, the day after I got laid off, you know, I'm not going to lie, I kind of just stayed in bed all day.
Mm-hmm.
The day after that, I was like, all right, go time.
Mm-hmm.
So that was when I really started focusing on getting the Kung Fu school open. And, you know, I got everything done and I opened the school. 2 weeks later, they're like, hey, I got you a job. I'm like, awesome.
There you go.
Nice.
Look at that.
So, and I just bought, like, I bought a house in June, and then, you know, July, I made my first, you know, mortgage payment. I'm like, this is great. Everything's going good. August, I get laid off.
Yeah.
I'm like, great.
That's
So-
awesome.
So, you know, then I'm just like, all right, well, Kung Fu school comes next. And, you know, in the meantime, I'll look for a job.
Yeah. That's
And, you know, in the industry that I work in, it's not necessarily about what you know, but about who you know.
Mm.
And, you know, I got a call one day. He's like, hey, coming for an interview. I'm like, all right, I'm coming. I'll be there in 30 minutes. And, you know, I got there, and then 2 weeks later, they're like, all right, here's a job. You know, can you start it on the 17th? I'm like, absolutely. So
yeah. Good.
everything, my mother always says that, you know, things happen for a reason.
They do.
And I do believe that. You know, I'm not necessarily a spiritual man, but I do believe that everything happens for a reason. And I may not know what that reason is, but I know that things happen for a reason. So I always try to look at everything as a positive rather than a negative, where, you know, when I got laid off, I'm just like, you know, does that suck? Yeah, of course that sucks. But, you know, what can I take away from this? And the thing that I took away from that, spend time opening the Kung Fu school. And I did everything. I mean, I did the insurance, I did the tax forms, I did the website, I did the Instagram, the Facebook, the, you know, the design, all that stuff I did. And I'm just like, you know, actually I didn't do the design. A good friend of mine, Matt, he's a tattoo artist. He designed the logo for me, and he did an amazing job. I'm very happy with it. And you know, but I did all that stuff, and I'm like, all right, go time. And, you know, I got the school open, and then, you know, I get the school open, and then a week later I have a job. I mean, the timing could not have been more perfect.
Yeah.
So, you know, everything happens for a reason, and, you know, good things are meant to come.
Yep.
And, you know, it's just, you know, 6 ways one, half a dozen another.
And real quick, you just made me think about something. So before we leave, I did want to make sure I'll comment on this. Like, some people are full-time school owners, some people are part-time school owners. You're a part-time school owner. I'm a part-time school owner. We have other jobs. We have other responsibilities. And some people want to make this their full job. Just know that if you decide to make this your full job, yes, there's going to be some things that you may have to do. Like, I would suggest maybe doing contracts, because you got to make sure that that income comes in. As a part-time school owner, you're not as pressed for money usually as like a full-time school owner might be.
Yeah.
So you got to make sure, like, whatever your priorities are, you got to make sure that you're hitting those priorities the correct way. Because, you know, I understand, I used to be against contracts, but now I see why people do them now.
Yeah.
That ensures that you get the finances to keep the building open and that you get paid.
Even money aside, it kind of like, I mean, people are feel more obligated to show up when they have a contract.
Right.
That's true too.
Yeah.
Because like, I'm paying, I might as, you know, I
Might as well go.
I
Same with
might
like
as
a
well
gym
go.
membership, you know?
Exactly. Because
Yeah.
people, the hardest part is showing up. I'm
Yeah.
telling you, like
Once you get there and like you get going,
right.
it's, you're just like, man, I'm glad I came.
Right.
But, you know, you're right. You know, the hardest part is just showing up. And,
Yeah.
you know, it's that motivation of getting out of it. Like, man, I just worked all day.
Mhm.
You know, now I got to go, you know, I got to take a shower. I got to eat. I got to get changed. And I got to go to class. I'm like, man, I just want to go home and lay in bed.
Right.
You know, especially my generation. Like, I'm
Right.
I'm 26 years old.
Yep.
You know, all I want to do when I get home from work, I want to, you know, just,
chill.
I just want to lay down and play video games.
Right.
But, you know, at the same time, you know, I've got my own house. I've got a mortgage. I got to mow the lawn. I got to, you know, I got to organize. I got to clean. I got to take care of the animals. I got to, you know, I got to get to the Kung Fu school, you know, so, you know, but I asked for all of this.
Yep.
Like, you know, I asked for a lot of this to happen to me. So I can't sit here and complain
Yeah.
because I wanted all this to happen.
Yep.
So I'm not going to sit here and complain about it.
Yep.
Right.
I'm going to sit, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to be like, all right, let's get things done. Let's get the ball rolling, but, I also, like, I have my days where I just kind of wake up and I'm like, I'll sleep in until 8 o'clock,
Yeah.
like, instead of getting up at like 6 a.m. like I normally do, I'll be like, I'll sleep in until about 8 o'clock, I'll sleep in a little bit, like I have those days,
Yeah.
I have those days where I'll go out and I'll just be like, I'll mow the lawn tomorrow or something like that, like we all have those days, but don't let it, spiral into an everyday occurrence,
Right.
because that's when you
Minute
start
turns
really
into
getting
an
behind.
hour turns to a day turns to a week.
Week turns to a month, and it just keeps going.
And so, guys, maybe another part 2, because it seems like this is a topic that we can just
keep going on
about.
about.
Because honestly, no, opening the school is a lot.
It is. It's huge.
It is a lot, and there's a lot that goes into it. There's something that we didn't even talk about that's huge, and that's your culture.
Yeah.
What's your culture gonna be?
I was gonna make do a quick thing on what you just said of the culture, right? Like, there's another gym that I went to for a while, and culture was very different. In fact, the person who runs this place spoke about this. And remember what I said about like turning people around, or if you are running as a business, your retention needs to be high.
Mm-hmm.
You need that income to keep the business running.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if it's not your only source of income or whatever, like he in fact is kind of like not the opposite, but like this guy also fights. He doesn't only teach and coach. He is a fighter as well as still fighting, coaching,
Mm-hmm.
right? With that being said, he said like he does not change anything for a new person. Like if they go in there and it's too hard, peace.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Try somewhere else. So I thought that was kind of interesting hearing him say that. But again, if depending part-time, full-time, what you're trying to do, you've got to adjust and adapt to try to keep people in.
And then with him already doing some fighting, he probably has an establishment where people are like, oh, well, even if it's hard, I still trust him, so I'm still going to go.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
It's a very esteemed, like, gym.
Right.
So people will try to stick it out.
Right.
But I'm sure a lot of people, even in my short time there, and I am one of those people now. For now, I'm going to go back later, but like people come and go just like any other martial arts school. I planned on going there temporarily, but even in that time, I saw people show up and then not show up again.
Yeah.
So
It happens a lot. So, and it's people are going to be like that with your school, because they may come for a season, then they may have to leave for a little bit.
It's kind of like
and then come
even
back.
no matter if it's kung fu or whatever. Like imagine a person just comes in and they're always just that negative energy in the room. It's like you got to turn this around, man. Nobody wants that. As a teacher and as a fellow student, whatever. It's like you have to change that attitude.
Well, I'm dealing with that right now with somebody in my karate class where, they have people
here.
now that, well, it's not that they don't want to be here, but like they're not being a team player.
Mm.
And the other people on the team see that, okay, this person's not a team player. So they're not fond of this person. And so like it's difficult because, even sometimes this person's rubbing me the wrong way. And I'm like, man, this person's starting to rub me the wrong way.
It's
They get on
tough,
my
man.
nerves. Like,
That's tough, yeah.
and that's another aspect of owning a school. Like, you're going to have a lot of different personalities that come through your doors
There's a lot of that in the military too.
that you have to
Yeah.
deal with. And just because you don't vibe with that person's paying you to teach them.
Yeah.
You still need to teach that person.
Right.
Now, unless they're doing something that is really just like, I can't have you do that.
Yeah.
Different. But if you just don't vibe with them, you can't just be like, man, I don't like you. You need to get out.
Right.
But they're paying you that $200 a month or whatever it
Gotta work
is.
around it.
Yeah, you better work around. You better learn how to get along with them.
Right.
Yeah. And for a period of time, I was that student where I would come in and I would just be in a bad mood and I had a bad energy. And, especially, in my teens, 14, 15, 16 years old, everybody remembers being a teenager and, just being like that.
I could imagine.
Yeah. It was.
I was a different person. Like
Yeah.
I always look back and say, well, I'm still me, but man, it was not the same.
Yeah, it's
at
not.
all.
And, me being, 14, 15, 16 years old in that environment, there were plenty of times where I went in and I was just in a bad mood and, Sifu would be like, "Hey, I need to work with this person." I'm like, "I don't want to work.
I don't want to work at all.
I don't wanna,
Right,
I
right,
don't
right.
want to do anything. I just
Yeah.
want to stand here and but those were the days that were the hardest for me because all I wanted to do was do kung fu.
Yeah.
But I let other things in my life take over, and it took away from me doing my kung fu. So
We have a student here with a very similar thing right now who's not a teen, actually young adult, I'd say.
Yeah.
Always coming in talking about such like all these outside factors, and it's like,
Mhm.
you can only control what you do,
Right.
not what other people
Right.
do. And
yeah, and
Right.
it's so hard to make that divide of your personal life and your kung fu life. But like we were saying earlier, there is no
they're
divide.
one and the same.
There exactly.
You know?
And your kung fu life is the one that is going to, at least in my experience, is the one that's going to make your life prosper.
Yeah.
Because kung fu is more than fighting. It's more than forms. It's more than discipline. It's more than respect. It is a way of life.
Yeah.
And kung fu should be used all the time, everywhere, for everything.
Any day when I go home to 2 kids and the wife, I can make that room have a bad day, or I can make them have a good day,
Mm-hmm.
or if they're already having a bad day, make their day just a little better
Right.
or worse.
Right.
Yeah.
So I have to realize that every time I come home, no matter what kind of day I've had,
And it's the same thing here, because you'll come in and you can you've seen it. There's been times where it's like, oh, these kids ain't feeling it today, or these adults ain't feeling it today, or these
Right.
teens ain't feeling it today,
Yeah.
and you got to be the fire starter where you go.
Or I haven't had the best
Yeah.
day, and the kids are full of that energy.
Yeah.
They're screaming. And it's like,
Yes.
all right, okay, I'm glad you're in a good mood. Shut up. Let's take it down a notch. But the point stands. Your energy, whether you want it to or not, affects others.
It does. It
So-
does. And so, the culture, just to quickly say this and then we'll get out of here. The culture is something that you have to establish and that you have to be and create. You need, and your culture can change, so maybe you start off one way and you're human, you're going to evolve, you're
Right.
going to change. So the Kung Fu school changes. Like at one point, I would definitely say here, we were a lot more forms based, and we're still forms based.
Yeah.
But then I started to take application more into my training,
Mhm.
more fighting, more sparring, more things like that. And so now, if you see it, like you're like, hey, like those Northern Shaolin guys can spar pretty good, or they fight pretty good, because like the culture started to change a little bit,
Right.
and it started to get a little bit less. Oh, I'm having a bad day. Nobody cares. Shut up.
Yeah.
Get on the floor. Do what I ask you to do now.
Right. That's
Okay.
one of the things I love most about it. Whether it's kung fu or just working out or that whole like being a family or being there for people, like that's the thing. The world doesn't owe you anything. It doesn't care if you've had a bad
Right.
day.
Yeah.
Like if you got to be there for somebody, you need to be there.
Right.
Yeah. And the amount of times that like I love my mother to death. I really do. The amount of times that she has called me because her van broke down, or she needs me to come to the store, or she needed me to go pick her something up, or something was going on, or whatever the case may be. Every single time something happens, my mother's like, honey, I'm so sorry. And I'm just like, stop it. You're my mom.
Right.
I'm going to take care of you. Don't
Yeah.
worry about it. The
Right.
second my mother calls me and she's like, I have a problem, I completely, no matter what kind of day I had, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If she calls me and something's going on, I'm taking care of it.
Right.
And I remember one day in particular, this is the last thing before we go. I remember one day in particular, I'd gone by her house and her dryer wasn't working. And, I went to her and I said, hey, how long has the dryer not been working? Or I'm sorry, it was the washer. And I was like, how long has the washer not been working? She was like, oh, two months or so.
Whew.
And I was like, well, what have you been doing to wash the clothes? And she was like, I've just been going to the laundromat. And I'm just like, okay, so you have to take all the laundry, load it into your van, take it into the laundromat, wait there, take it out. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to have you doing that. So the same day, I got in my truck. I went to Lowe's. I bought her a washing machine and I installed it. And then I went back to her and I said, all right, you have a washing machine now.
Nice.
And she's like, what do you mean? I'm just like, I bought you a washing machine. She's like, oh, honey, you didn't have to do that. I'm like, yeah, I did. You're my mom.
Yeah.
I got to take care of you.
Right.
So,
It's funny you
you
say
know, I
that.
get her being a mom and she's like, you know, I don't want my kid to have to, you know, take care of me. That's kind of the parent's job. But at a point, you know, at some point, kid's going to be the one to start taking care of their parents.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be a lot in the same with my Kung Fu school.
I was just about to make that point.
Where,
Yeah.
you know, it doesn't matter what kind of day I had. If my student comes in and they're just like, hey, this is going on, I'm like, all right, let's fix it.
Right.
You know, how do we make things better?
Right.
You know, how do we get this taken care of and stuff like that. So I wanted to be all in the same with my Kung Fu school, where no matter who it is, no matter what it is, you know, we make it better and we improve and we just make it work.
There's such irony in your story because you know what I'm doing the first thing tomorrow morning?
Installing a washing machine.
Trying to fix our washing machine. before, yeah. Yep. And let me rephrase my last statement too about, like, you know, being there for people. My point I was kind of trying to make is even your Kung Fu doesn't care if you've had a bad day.
That's true.
Yeah.
You've got to show up and you got to train.
That's true.
Yeah.
You
gotta
want it
do
to
it.
work, you got to do it.
You
You
got
got
to
to Shia LaBeouf it.
Yeah. Just do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
So Joe, I want you to make sure you go home, and when you take that first bite of that hamburger steak,
I'm looking forward to
think
it.
about me
I will.
and just be like, man, Sifu would love this.
I have to bring you some.
So now that we've had our Southern goodbyes,
Yeah.
I promise you that is YouTube
That was a pretty good Southern
podcast.
goodbye right
yeah,
there.
that was a Southern goodbye because we're like
yeah.
40 minutes ago. We're like, yeah, we're about to end this.
Yeah. It's all good.
But
That's all right.
so Sifu Logan, no man, of course not.
Yeah.
No, this is fun, man. This is great. Do you have any other closing comments about, you know, starting a school? Any advice that you have for anybody out there listening or looking at this podcast?
The biggest thing I can say is, and this is going to sound cliche, but the biggest thing I can say is, you know, keep your head up because, you know, it's so hard in the beginning, but once you actually, you know, get it open, get your space, get your students and stuff like that, it makes it all worth it. It really does, because it's something, especially if you're as motivated as I am, or if you're as, you know, enthusiastic as I am about it. You know, if you love it as much as I do, or as much as Sifu Delmar does, or any martial artist does, you know, it's so worth it to go through those hard, arduous tasks and deal with, you know, all the, the good and bad of those things, and, you know, just do what you got to do, make it happen, and, like, just keep your head up. Don't lose faith in it, because I promise everything that you're going to do, it will be worth it one day, because you're going to look back and be like, man, I guess, you know, that was the easy part, because once you start teaching and once you start getting students and once you start doing it, you know, maybe a little bit more than part-time, not quite full-time, but a little bit more than part-time, you're like, man, I wish it was back in the days where I had 3 students and, you know, I could do this, you know, a couple hours a day. But, you know, when you're full steam ahead and you've got, you know, 15, 20 students, and, you know, because I was in a school where I was teaching 15 or 20 students a day, and, you know, 5 days a week. And, you know, when I was teaching there, it was chaos. But, you know, the days that I miss are the days where I only had 2 or 3 people, and, you know, we could just, you know, really get in depth with what we were working on. Not to say we didn't do that with 15 or 20 people, but, you know, when you only have 2 or 3 people, it just seemed a little bit more, you know, coherent, and it was just a little bit easier. So, you know, just keep your head up, keep going, and, you know, if you got questions, you know, reach out to the people that you know, and, you know, research, and, you know, find alternatives and all of those things. You know, that's you know, that's the biggest thing I can say, is just keep your head up and keep going.
Coach Joe, you got anything?
I'll keep it short and sweet, but it's just, you know, just understand that anything you want in life requires hard work, very hard work.
Yeah.
So in order to get things you want, you got to be willing to do things you don't want to do.
My advice to you, if you want to do it, like Shia LaBeouf says, just do it. You know, don't be I mean, a lot of people are afraid to take risk.
Yeah.
And as martial artists, when you get in any kind of sparring match, any kind of athletic whatever, you know, where somebody's trying to punch, kick, or hit you, it's a risk. But you take that risk because you prepared for it. So if you want to start a martial arts school, go ahead and do what you need to do to prepare for it.
Yeah, don't wait.
Yeah, train, get yourself ready, learn teaching pedagogy, all these different things that you can do. But the only way to do it is just to do it. And you got to take a risk. And you'd be surprised that a lot of people who have jumped out there and done it have been successful. And maybe they didn't think they were going to be successful. But, I mean, like you just said.
It's like there's been what is it like? There's nothing wrong with planning and planning smartly.
Right.
And planning extensively if you have to.
Right.
But at some point, if you don't
take a risk,
if you don't take action, nothing's going to happen. It's going to stay a plan.
Well, and
forever.
like you said earlier, it all goes back to that of, you know, you got to make that first step. You got to get out of bed. You got to go to class. You got to.
That's right.
Just getting that momentum going is the absolute hardest part. So it all goes back to that, like you said earlier. You know, it's just, you know,
do it.
Just get going.
Take action.
So, well, this has been a great podcast. I might have to do a part 2 because if we don't, we'll never get off. And they're going to keep listening to us for the next 2 hours. So this is Martial Mentality signing off. Peace.